Hey there people, how you doing? So today we have another comparison, and this time around, the Vivo X50 Pro will tackle another very highly priced flagship. Fun fact, it could be considered to be one of the most expensive flagships out there. Almost overpriced is the Galaxy Note 20 Ultra. And well, the X50 Pro costs about half the price of the Note 20 Ultra, so I'm really interested to see if the Note 20 Ultra will be capable of showing that it is worth double the amount of money, at least in terms of cameras. So to find out, let's get into this comparison without any further ado. Alright, first image, and here, as you can see, not a lot of difference overall. I think there's a little bit more vibrance on the Note 20, while the X50 Pro, although not as vibrant, it does have a tad bit more shadow detail, but I think that for this scene in particular, I kinda like how the Note 20 looks with the extra bit of contrast, and it really pops up with the greens. So yes, for this one I am going with the Note 20, but I think we can also chalk this image up to personal preference. Now for this one, however, I think that both of them are basically identical. Even the colors overall look very similar. The only difference that is at least visible to me is the extra bit of bokeh that we can get in the background on the Note 20 Ultra, and that is thanks to the humongous sensor we have on the Note 20 Ultra. So yeah, other than that, it's basically the same photograph. However, moving on to this image here, I definitely prefer how the X50 Pro looks. Of course, I like how the vibrance overall is on the Note 20 Ultra with the greens and all that, but man, that tremendous amount of shadow detail, the dynamic range is incredible on the X50 Pro. So no doubt I'm picking the X50 Pro for this one. This image, once again, I think it's a complete tie. I mean, there's no legible difference here whatsoever. The colors, details, dynamic range, everything is the same on both. I mean, here it really shows that in proper daylight images, even a mid-range device like the X50 Pro can take just as good images as a flagship that costs double the amount of money. But for this ultra-wide angle image, here I definitely like how the Note 20 looks. I do think there is a little bit more shadow detail on the X50 Pro, but even so, I like how the Note 20 gives that extra bit of contrast and vibrance. In this scene in particular, it looks a lot more pleasing in my opinion. Another ultrawide, and here I actually like how the X50 Pro looks. Now, mind you, I do like how the vibrance is on the Note 20 Ultra, but the amount of shadow detail that we're getting on the X50 Pro, it is truly impressive. And another thing to note is that the Note 20 Ultra looks a lot more natural in terms of the color tones. Yeah, that's right. But the X50 Pro on the other hand, it has this warm cast which is not super pleasing in my opinion, but yeah, that amount of shadow detail that we're getting, it tops everything else. Alright, moving on to 1x zoom, and once again, there is no difference here, nothing that I can spot at least. But the differences do show up when we go on to 2x zoom, and here's where the X50 Pro truly shines because it has a dedicated 2x optical zoom camera, and man, the amount of realistic detail and overall sharpness that we're getting on the X50 Pro, it is quite a few steps ahead of the over sharpening that we can see in the Note 20 Ultra. Of course, at first glance it might look very similar, but the Note 20 Ultra does have a lot more over sharpening artifacts than the X50 Pro. So for 2x zoom, the X50 Pro is a no-brainer here. But the moment we move on to 5x zoom, which is actually optical on both of these cameras, yeah, both of them have a 5x periscope zoom. The X50 Pro in particular has 2 zoom cameras. It's just wow, the hardware on this thing is crazy. But anyways, I do think the Note 20 Ultra looks quite a bit better. The overall sharpness, the detail levels, everything looks so much better than the X50 Pro. Now standalone, the X50 Pro does look good, but it stands no chance against the Note 20 Ultra. Now moving on to 10x zoom, and here the differences are just that much more exaggerated. There is a lot more grain overall on the X50 Pro, the sharpness is quite a bit better on the Note 20 Ultra, and overall the Note 20 is easily taking a win here. Alright, now here we have 108 megapixels on the Note 20 Ultra and 48 megapixels on the X50 Pro. Now of course, the extra amount of detail that we can get out of both of them is only visible once we crop in, but at first glance both of them look really nice. And actually, the Note 20 Ultra is looking a lot more accurate in terms of overall colors, and the extra bit of contrast is really making the subject pop. So yes, I am picking the Note 20 Ultra for this one. Now this is another high resolution image, and The Note 20 Ultra, once I cropped in a little bit, it has this tremendous amount of detail that even the X50 Pro cannot match. I mean, the Note 20 Ultra has double the resolution. I mean, you'd expect at least that much amount of detail, I guess. But yeah, nonetheless, the overall image, it looks very nice, and Note 20 Ultra once again looks a lot more accurate in terms of the color tones. There is this warm cast on the X50 Pro which looks a little bit unnatural in terms of the circumstances. And yeah, overall, I think I'm gonna go with the Note 20 Ultra for this high resolution image. Now here is 12 megapixel versions of both, and yeah, both of them do look a little bit better in terms of overall dynamic range, especially in the shadows. It looks quite a bit better on the Note 20 in particular. So overall, I think I like how the Note 20 looks once again. It looks a lot more natural, and there is obviously less detail as compared to the 108 megapixel mode, but I think in this case at least I like the extra bit of shadow detail more than the sharpness overall that we can get. Now moving on to 5x zoom on both, which is again optical. And yeah, the X50 Pro, it looks good standalone, but again, against the Note 20 Ultra, you can see in that foliage, it looks tremendously good. The sharpness is almost insane, just how good it looks. It just blows my mind. The X50 Pro, really, it's not even gonna come close to the Note 20 in terms of zooming in. Now this is an indoors image, obviously very well lit. As you can see, both of them look tremendously good and very similar indeed. I really like how the Note 20 handles its colors this time around, because as far as I remember, the S20 had this extra bit of vibrance and contrast that used to shove it down our throats or something like that. Well, the Note 20, it maintains a very good balance. And as you'd expect, the X50 Pro is just doing this tremendously good job in terms of colors and detail. It's absolutely matching up to the Note 20 here. Now, of course, I had to take a backlit image because, we have to test out the harder circumstances as well on these cameras. And initially, I thought both of them looked very similar, but I do think there is a little bit more detail on the X50 Pro. There is a little bit more grain on the X50 Pro as well, but the detail, I think it trumps over the Note 20 quite a bit. So yes, I'm going to pick the X50 Pro for this one. Alright, now we have some selfies here, and as you can see, the X50 Pro is just doing this tremendously good job in terms of overall details. I mean, you can literally see everything on my face. The Note 20 on the other hand, it's really smoothing up my face, and yeah, it just doesn't look that appealing, at least, not to me. But the X50 Pro, in terms of everything, the skin tones as well, they just look amazing. Same story here for this portrait selfie. The Note 20 doesn't even come close in terms of overall detail levels. I think having a 32 megapixel sensor on the selfie camera here is really paying off for the X50 Pro. Now, as good as the selfies looked on the X50 Pro, the rear camera portraits, they are a completely different story, just the opposite of what we could consider to be details on my face, because man, I can't even recognize myself there. It looks so weird, like some kind of a mannequin whose face is melting away. Yeah, I didn't even want to include this image, it looks so mortifying to me. Anyways, obviously the Note 20 is the one to go for here. Same story for this one, and I did make sure that the beauty modes were turned off for both the instances, but nonetheless, I can't even think of any words to describe myself anymore in those portraits of the X50 Pro. The Note 20 Ultra looks so much better in terms of overall details, and I guess the skin tones also look a little bit better. Now let's move on to night mode, because let's face it, that's where the real competition begins. And here, I kinda like how the Note 20 looks. It looks a lot more accurate, first and foremost. Also, the overall vibrance, although it's there on the Note 20, it's way too much on the X50 Pro. It's muddling up all the colors, and yeah, I don't really like how it looks. So yes, I'm going to pick the Note 20 for this one. But moving on to this image, and yes, it is a low light, backlit image. Yeah, I like messing up my conditions a little, but even so, the Note 20 is not as bright as the X50 Pro. Also, the detail levels of the X50 Pro is just a tad, just a smidge bit better than the Note 20. So yeah, I'm going to pick the X50 Pro for this one. By a very small margin, but it is a win for a phone that costs half the price. Same story again. And here it's like the Note 20's night mode is not working properly, because I can tell you the results can and will be better than this The X50 Pro is doing so much better in terms of overall detail and sharpness. Even the brightness is so much better. Now, this is what could be considered to be an ultra low light image, and here both of them are doing a fairly good job, and I would have called this one to be a tie. But if you were to look closely at my signature right at the corner of the painting, there you'll see the Note 20 is maintaining the whites a little bit better. The textures are a little bit more visible, while the X50 Pro is blowing it out just a little bit. And yeah, I mean, it gives the Note 20 the smallest possible lead in a photo comparison that I've seen, I guess. But I guess it's a lead nonetheless. Here's another super low light image, and well, I would have again called this a tie, but upon closer inspection, I did find that there is a little bit more grain and noise overall in the background of the X50 Pro, so I guess that makes the Note 20 Ultra's image appear a little bit better. But you know, it's a negligible difference in my opinion, so I'm just gonna go ahead and call this one a tie. Now, this image is what I would truly call to be one of the hardest ones because it is a harshly backlit, low light image, and well, given the circumstances, both are doing just a tremendously good job. But if you were to look at the center of the braids, that's where the focus was for both of them. Well, the X50 Pro, although not as bright as the Note 20 Ultra, it does have a little bit more sharpness overall. The colors are also a little bit more accurate in terms of the overall lighting conditions on the X50 Pro. So yes, I am picking the X50 Pro for this one. It's really giving the Note 20 a run for its money, at least in terms of night mode, yeah? And well, that would be true if I hadn't taken the ultra-wide night mode images, because, man, the Note 20 Ultra's ultra-wide camera is insanely good in terms of night mode, because X50 Pro, it doesn't even come close. It's smudging up almost every single detail out there, and yeah, well, I don't think I have to say anything more, it's just not good enough. Another ultra-wide night mode, and here, same story. The Note 20 Ultra, if you look at those stones right there, you'll see that the X50 Pro is almost making them look like they're polished and the complete texture is just gone. But the Note 20 on the other hand, as you'd expect, it is doing just a tremendous job in terms of detail. Now this is an outdoors night mode, and here I kinda like how the Note 20 looks because the overall details in the sky, the less amount of noise, and there's also the lack of unnatural magenta tint, and yeah, overall I really like how the Note 20 looks. Now I would have ended the comparison here, but obviously there are certain things that the X50 Pro does which the Note 20 Ultra cannot. It just can't. And that is macro photography, because as you can see, the Note 20 Ultra, it doesn't even stand a chance when it comes to macro images, because the X50 Pro is just so good at it. It basically has one of the best macro cameras or macro modes out there, like right beside the OnePlus 8 Pro, and yeah, it's impressive as you can see here. Now another thing that I personally really like on the X50 Pro is the ability to change up the color scheme completely when you're taking night mode photos. So when you couple the teal and orange preset that we have on the X50 Pro along with the tremendously good and detailed night mode images, you can get some very interesting and overall some of the most invigorating results that you can see. I mean, this one is proof enough, I guess, making the red controller appear orange, and same story here. As you can see, the Note 20 Ultra, although that one's color is gone, but the hard drive, it's completely changed to a teal color, and you know, it just gives such an unique look that I cannot help but love these presets. So that is a wrap for this comparison, and man, the X50 Pro's camera just impresses me every single time. Even though I've used it and tested it so many times over, I just cannot believe how it is so easily racking up and competing against a doubly priced flagship. And yeah, I am always rendered completely speechless when it comes to the X50 Pro's comparisons, especially against the Note 20 Ultra here, because man, the fact that the X50 Pro took an upper hand in quite a few images out there, that really shows how good the X50 Pro's camera truly is. I mean, the Note 20 Ultra's camera isn't bad. I mean, it is easily one of the best ones out there, especially after how the new approach of more natural color tones for Samsung is, I think it's a tremendously good camera, but the X50 Pro is, for its price, it is a better camera. I mean, there's no other way to say it. If you're going to pay double the price, you should get at least, let's just say, half the amount better camera performance overall. 50% would be enough, but surely that doesn't appear to be the case. Of course, the Note 20 Ultra definitely took a lot more wins against the X50 Pro, but even so, for the price that we're going to pay for the Note 20 Ultra at $1,300, double that of the X50 Pro, it really makes me think that if all you care about the cameras, then why even go for the Note 20 Ultra? I mean, the X50 Pro is definitely going to be a better buy. Now, of course, the phones themselves do differ in a lot of ways. The X50 Pro is a mid-range device. It does have quite a few compromises, but if you are looking for a tremendously good camera at a relatively lower price, I mean half the price of the Note 20 Ultra, then yes, the X50 Pro is an amazing device. It's an amazing camera. And of course, it does have that gimbal camera which just helps out so much in the night mode photos, and consistently for every single night mode photo that I took, at least in this comparison, it took 1 to 2 seconds extra exposure time than the Note 20. When the Note 20 took 4 seconds, the X50 Pro took 5 to 7 seconds. That was the range for it. That's really impressive, and it can give you technically some better results. So yes, that is it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, do hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will be seeing you guys later. Cheers.